Greetings from Tromaville, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Horror Talk, the show where I pick a random topic about horror, and I just talk about it, sometimes off the top of my head, sometimes with a few notes. But this is a series that I love to do. It's a little more relaxed than my usual content, a little less polished, and I enjoy doing this series. It's one of my favorite things to do on this channel. And while we're at it, please say hello to Jimmy and Lexi, two Wheaton Terriers that I'm staying with for this week. They are two good doggies, so please tell them they're a good boy and a good girl. And with that, let's get into the video. Also, forgive me if I seem kind of sweaty because it's hot up here and I'm leaving the air conditioner off so you can actually hear what I have to say. So forgive me if I get hot and sweaty and sticky throughout this video. So as you can see by the title of this video, today we're looking at Troma movies and Troma Entertainment. I love Troma. I am a big fan of Troma movies. It's a production company that I have a lot of respect for and I highly admire. And I wanted to talk about Troma movies for this episode because on August 29th, we are finally getting a wider release of the Toxic Avenger remake. Now, I love the original Toxic Avenger. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'm just going to say it, it's my favorite superhero movie. You know, some people are Superman fans, some people are Batman fans. I'm a Toxic Avenger fan. And I mean that without the slightest bit of irony. I love the Toxic Avenger movies. And I am cautiously looking forward to the new Toxic Avenger. The Toxic Avenger remake came out in 2023 and went through the festival circuit back in 2023, and we've been waiting a while for it to get a wider release so that we can actually see the movie. And it's finally getting at least a wider release on August 29th. I hope it gets released in my area. With movies like this, it's kind of iffy if the movie like this will get released in a theater near me or not. It's kind of a coin flip. Sometimes I get movies like this near me, sometimes I don't. I am hoping that it opens up near me so that I can see the movie, but we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee that it will be released in my area. But like I said, I am cautiously looking forward to the new Toxic Avenger movie, just because I'm happy we're getting another Toxic Avenger film. We got so many Batman movies, we got some Superman movies, we got a lot of other superhero movies, but we B-movie fans, and we fans of schlock and exploitation films and bloody B movies, we deserve our superheroes too. That's why I'm happy that this new Toxic Avenger is coming out. But I am worried. I am cautiously looking forward to it, like I said, because the charm of the original Toxic Avenger and the original Toxic Avenger series is the fact that these movies were done so independently, and they're not micro-budget movies, but they did have small budgets. And because of that, the filmmakers had to work with what they had, and I'll get into the filmmakers in a minute, but the filmmakers had to work with fewer resources and fewer money, and that's kind of the charm to these films. They are so independent that they're not concerned about what appeals to mainstream audiences. They're done so independently that the cheesiness and some of the schlockiness around the effects it's charming in a way. It has that low-budget charm to it, and I don't know if that's going to be captured in the Toxic Avenger remake. I'm not going in expecting the new Toxic Avenger to be like the original Toxic Avenger. I would like it to be different. I would like it to feel somewhat different, but I do want it to feel somewhat like a Troma movie, and I don't know if with a bigger budget it will feel like a Troma film. But that's a concern for me. I still want to see the movie, and I'm hoping that I enjoy it. But with that, because of the new Toxic Avenger movie coming out in August 29th, I wanted to celebrate Troma movies. So for the next few weeks until the release of the new Toxic Avenger, this channel is going to be focused on Troma films, and we're going to be celebrating Troma Entertainment because like I said, I'm a big fan of Troma Entertainment, and with the new Toxic Avenger out, I wanted to show appreciation for one of my favorite movie studios. So, Troma Entertainment was created by Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Herz, and like I said, this is an independent film studio. And when I say independent, I mean independent. And it's one of the most notorious independent film studios. Michael Herz and Lloyd Kaufman, they got together to make movies independently, and they wanted to make the movies they wanted to make. And that's why I respect Troma so much. This is a group of people, and it has grown as a company since, but this is a group of people who wanted to make their own films and celebrate independent cinema, so they created their own production company where they not only make their own movies, but they also distribute a lot of independent films. And something that people need to respect about these independent film companies is that so many actors and so many directors that we know today got their start with independent film companies. You look at Roger Corman and New World Pictures. Joe Dante got his start there. Martin Scorsese got his start with Roger Corman. Francis Ford Coppola, I believe, got his start with Roger Corman. So many people that we celebrate today as great actors and directors got their start with Roger Corman. James Cameron, he got his start with Roger Corman. And it's the same thing with Troma Entertainment. A lot of people we know in the industry today got their start with Troma Entertainment. Starting with James Gunn. You know, the new Superman movie is out now, and James Gunn has made quite a splash in superhero movies with, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, the new Superman movie, and things like that. And now he's heading the DC cinematic universe over at WB. But he got his start in Troma Entertainment. In fact, he was the screenplay writer for one of my favorite Troma films, Tromeo and Juliet. Love that movie. You also have Trey Parker and Matt Stone, who got their start with Troma Entertainment because they made the movie Cannibal the Musical, and Troma was the company that distributed that film. So the people who made South Park gained some notoriety and got their start with having their film distributed by Troma. Vincent D'Onofrio, Samuel L. Jackson, J.J. Abrams, they all got their start either in Troma Entertainment or because they had their films distributed by Troma Entertainment. And because of that, Troma Entertainment is a studio that deserves a lot of praise, especially for independent cinema. One of the things I love about Troma and Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Herz and the movies that they make in Troma, or at least are produced within Troma Entertainment Studios, is that they do not care. They do not care what's popular in, amongst mainstream media and stuff like that. They don't care about, being raunchy and having bad taste humor throughout their films. They don't care about having nudity and violence throughout their films. They make the movies they want to make. They may not have a budget for it, but they will make the movies they want to make. And what I love about Troma and Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Herz and the people involved, you can tell they truly love film. They truly love independent filmmaking and movies and stuff like that, because a lot of the times when they make their movies, now Lloyd Kaufman promotes the hell out of his movies, and he likes to do it in the old-fashioned way. Like, he will do stuff online, but he likes to do it in the old-fashioned way, where he goes from town to town promoting his movies and doing showcases of his films at drive-ins and movie theaters and stuff like that. He will do the online thing, of course, too, but there's just something about a filmmaker traveling from town to town with his movies that is just something we don't see too much anymore. Back in the glory days of grindhouse cinema and exploitation cinema, that's what the filmmakers would do. They would take their movie and they would travel from town to town to town with their movie and try to make as much money as they can in certain markets. And that's what Lloyd Kaufman does, and he still kind of does that today. But yes, okay, movie studios want to be able to make money because they want to be able to make money off, they want to be able to make a living off of the movies they make. But Lloyd Kaufman cares more about people seeing their movies than making a profit. Not to say that his movies have not made a profit, and not to say that he does not want to make profits off of these movies, but Lloyd Kaufman wants people to see his movies. The Toxic Avenger it wasn't necessarily Troma's first movie, but it was the first breakout film for Troma that started getting Troma some notoriety. There's another movie that did that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Troma was like, the Toxic Avenger has become the poster child of Troma Entertainment, and there's a reason for that, because the character grew in popularity. Now, when the movie first came out, no one saw it. No one really gave it the time of day. It didn't make any money, but as time went on, it developed a huge cult following. You would see lines out the door and around the corner for people who wanted to see the Toxic Avenger. And the Toxic Avenger grew so much in popularity that there were sequels made of it, and there was a children's TV show made for it, The Toxic Crusaders. I have never seen it, but I've heard from people who have seen it. And what's funny is there are people who have seen The Toxic Crusaders who did not know that The Toxic Avenger or Toxic Crusaders came from a violent B-movie. But of course, Troma does not only make their own movies, and it doesn't only produce their own movies, it also distributes films by other independent creators. One of the most notorious in those regards is Blood-Sucking Freaks, which has quite the story behind it. Blood-Sucking Freaks was one of the early movies that Troma distributed, and as a result, it has become one of the most notorious Troma films. It's a very controversial film. It's an S&M movie, filled with nudity and misogyny and stuff like that. It is a very uncomfortable movie to watch. It's about this man named Sardu, master of the theater of the macabre, who has a stage show where it's put together like it's a magic act, but he's killing women on stage, which, yes, is similar to the premise of The Wizard of Gore by Herschel Gordon Lewis. But this movie is nastier and has a lot more nudity and stuff like that. But anyway, he also has a human trafficking ring that he has sort of in the basement of his establishment. And the reason that the Blood-Sucking Freaks became so notorious is it was directed by a man named Joel M. Reed. And Troma agreed to distribute it. Like I said, it wasn't the first movie that Troma distributed, but it is one of the earliest ones. This movie is filled with nudity and violence and very uncomfortable subject matter, and as a result of that, it was not able to get an R rating, and they had to cut a lot out of the film to get an R rating. Now, the film was cut down, and Blood-Sucking Freaks did get an R rating, but what they released was the unedited version. And there was some controversy around it where a woman showed it to their child, and the movie upset her child, and they blamed the film for that. Now, not to say that they should have been dishonest and released an rated R cut, but if you're grabbing a movie named Blood-Sucking Freaks to show your kid, and your kid is upset by that, that's your fault, it's not the movie's fault. I roll my eyes at that. It always bugs me when parents are upset that their child was upset by a rated R film. That's not the movie's fault, okay? A rated R film, it's not the fault of a rated R film or a unrated film or a rated X film or a rated mature film or whatever. It's not the movie's fault that it upset your kid. The movies were not made for kids. Now, I'm going to be honest, I have no problem with kids seeing rated R movies. I watched rated R movies when I was a kid, and I may not be the best example of it, but there are plenty of people who watched rated R movies when they were kids, and they turned out perfectly fine. Like, if your kid can handle rated R movies, then let them watch it and let them enjoy. But if your kid cannot handle rated R movies and they watch a rated R movie, it's not the movie's fault, bottom line. Anyway, off the soapbox. But that's one of the reasons why Blood-Sucking Freaks became so notorious, because of that incident. But going back to Troma Entertainment and what I love about Troma Entertainment, like I've said a few times in here, they are a truly independent film company making the movies that they want to make and distributing movies that not a lot of other companies would distribute. It's one of the reasons why I love some of these other boutique labels releasing shot-on-video movies and micro-budget movies, because they're allowing these films to be seen by other people. And I'm going to use a phrase that I heard from Exploitation Reviews. There's Rob from Exploitation Reviews. That's his channel, and I love his channel. He does great stuff. I wish I've commented on his videos more, but I suck at social media, so I apologize for that. But Rob from Exploitation Reviews, his stuff is great. He released a video talking about his top 20 Troma movies, and what he did was he did his top 10, as he called them, in-house Troma movies, and his top 10 outhouse Troma movies. And I believe, I don't know if he's the one who created this phrase, but this is the one I'm giving him credit for, this phrase. You know, you have the in-house Troma films, which were made and produced by Troma Entertainment, and you have the outhouse Troma films, which were movies not made by Troma Entertainment, but they were distributed by Troma Entertainment. Thus, they are Troma films. When you go into a Troma movie, you're gonna see stuff that you have not seen in other movies. You're gonna get into some interesting stuff, whether they are in-house or outhouse movies. All these movies have that independent charm to them that I love. Some, I'll admit, are higher quality than others, but I do think a lot of them have a quality to them. Even if they are micro-budget films that are rough around the edges, I still think there is a quality to a lot of these films because you have these filmmakers putting so much effort into making the movie that they want to make with little to no resources, and you all know how much I love to praise that. I love how crazy a lot of Troma films can get. I hear so many people doing videos where they're talking about crazy movies or wacky movies or something like that, and there's a lot of great, crazy, wacky stuff out there. But I think that is like, if you want something truly wacky and truly crazy, check out some Troma movies. You're gonna be in for some really, really insane stuff. But it is important to preference, and I think many people know this, and Troma fans in general know this. Troma films are not for everybody. There are some that I would say can appeal to wider audiences, something like Death by Temptation, which is an outhouse Troma film that has some great stuff in it. I love that movie, and that can appeal, I think, more to wider audiences than most stuff. But something like Redneck Zombies, which is an outhouse horror movie, or something like Terror Firmer, which is an in-house horror movie, those films may not appeal to everybody, so that is to be expected. But that is one of the things that I love about Troma Entertainment and filmmakers involved with Troma Entertainment. They aren't trying to appeal to everybody. They're trying to appeal to Troma fans and people who like these kinds of movies. I respect filmmakers that aren't trying to please everybody when it comes to making films. That's why John Waters is one of my favorite directors. He's not trying to appeal to everybody with his movies. Frank Henenlotter, one of my favorite horror directors. Yeah, he's definitely not trying to please everybody with the movies he makes. I'm not really a fan of a lot of Rob Zombie movies. There are some that I like, but a lot of them aren't for me. But I still respect him because he's not making movies for everybody. He's making movies for his fans and the people who want to see the kind of stuff that he makes. So while I may not be a huge fan of Rob Zombie's movies, I do respect him as a filmmaker because he's not trying to appeal to everybody. He's trying to appeal to the people who like his kind of movies. And that's the big thing with Troma. Lloyd Kaufman is not trying to please everybody. He's trying to please Troma fans and people who like these kinds of films. But if you want to get into Troma movies, there's a lot of crazy stuff in there. You know, Troma films have some of the craziest deaths you will ever see. Focusing on like the in-house Troma films, there are some insane deaths in Troma movies. And that's because like Troma films and the Lloyd Kaufman Troma films and the in-house Troma films have sort of this cartoon logic to them, so there are things that can happen in those movies that you will not see in other horror movies, and you're completely fine with it. You know, that's a typical thing in a lot of horror comedies. You're okay if, you know, it goes outside of reality a little bit, but especially with Troma movies, the cartoon logic that you see in Troma films is top-notch. So there are some incredibly wacky, over-the-top things that you can see in a Troma movie, and you're fine with it because you know you're in this sort of cartoon logic area. Focusing on The Toxic Avenger, because without question that is my favorite Troma movie. I love The Toxic Avenger, and like I said, it is one of my favorite movies of all time, no joke. It's a superhero movie, and it is this over-the-top, gory movie. There's a lot of bad taste humor in the Toxic Avenger, but what I love about the original Toxic Avenger is there's also this weird wholesomeness to the movie. Just to get the plot out of the way, it takes place mostly, well, it at least starts out at the Tromaville Health Club, taking place in Tromaville, the chemical waste capital of the world. You have this annoying little scrawny guy named Melvin, and you have these bullies that are, tormenting people in the gym. The bullies' favorite pastime is to basically do their own version of Death Race 2000, where they go out at night in their car and run people over, and you get points depending on age. They're evil characters, but in a fun way. But anyway, they're picking on Melvin, and they decide to do a prank on Melvin where they get him to put on a ballerina outfit and make out with a sheep. I know. Long story short, he jumps out of a window and lands in a barrel of toxic waste. Watch the movie, you'll figure out how it happens. Cocaine is involved. And the toxic waste turns Melvin into the Toxic Avenger, the deformed yet lovable superhero. There's a dog scratching themselves down below. I apologize for the noise. But anyway, yes, the deformed yet lovable superhero, the Toxic Avenger. And the Toxic Avenger has super strength, he has this invulnerability, and he has this ability to detect evil. And when he senses an evil person, he just gets this uncontrollable urge to murder them violently. It's so fun. It's got this awesome over-the-top gore that also has that fun low-budget quality to it and stuff like that. The kills do get crazy and they do get violent and all that, but like I said, there's also a wholesomeness to the movie because the Toxic Avenger, or Toxie as he is known by Troma Entertainment and his fans, Toxie is just a character who just wants to do good. In many ways, he's like a more violent, raunchy version of Superman. He just wants to help people. So you'll see him murdering some criminal in a violent way, and then you'll see him help a little old lady across the street. You'll see him rip a guy's arm off, and then you'll see him go into someone's house who's having trouble opening a jar, and he'll just open the jar for them and stuff like that. Toxie is just this both violent and raunchy, but also a wholesome character, and that's why I love this movie so much. It's just, there's just this charm to the original Toxic Avenger that no other film has really captured, not even the Toxic Avenger sequels, and I honestly enjoy all of the Toxic Avenger sequels. We'll see if the remake is added on to that. And I kind of appreciate that he kills the bad guys. So many superhero movies, they have that code of honor where they won't kill anybody, but then, like Batman, he doesn't kill anybody, but the villains keep breaking out of Arkham Asylum and causing more havoc, and more people die because of that. It's refreshing to see a hero who's just like, no, I'm just going to kill this guy. That's just kind of refreshing to me. But the kills are just so fun and, like I said, so over the top and so entertaining. You just can't help but love Toxie. People who are fans of Troma and the Toxic Avenger, you know what I'm talking about, and you understand what I mean when I say that we love Toxie. And then, of course, you have movies like Class of Nuke High, which still fit in that world of Troma Entertainment and the Troma cinematic universe. While it does feel like a Troma movie, it does feel somewhat different from the Toxic Avenger. There are elements in it that are similar to the Toxic Avenger, but a lot of it feels different in some ways, and so it is able to be separated from the Toxic Avenger. And so many of the Lloyd Kaufman movies and the in-house Troma films do feel similar to each other, but different in a way. The Toxic Avenger feels like a Troma movie. The Class of Nuke High feels like a Troma movie. Terror Firmer feels like a Troma movie. Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead feels like a Troma movie, but they all still feel different from each other, so they feel like they're in the same world, but very different from each other. And a lot of Lloyd Kaufman's movies do have bad taste humor in them. Like Terror Firmer, one of my favorite Troma movies. Terror Firmer is another one of those films that the more I watch it, the more I love it. I put it every year around October. I do a ranking series where I rank my 31 favorite horror movies from a specific decade. And during the 90s, Terror Firmer made it onto the list. but ever since I've watched it since then, and it has gone higher on the list. Terra Firma is Troma's take on a slasher movie, but it's also a tribute to independent cinema and Troma films in general. You have this blind independent movie director making a Troma film, and the movie is all about the chaos that can happen on set of an independent movie taken to the extreme. And while these extreme problems are happening, you also have a killer going around murdering people in violent, over-the-top ways. Terra Firma has a lot of bad taste humor. It has a lot of offensive moments. But one of the reasons why it works is because it's making fun of everybody. That's one of the secrets to bad taste humor. You don't just focus on one specific group. You make fun of everyone equally, and that way no one really feels like they're targeted. There's also, like, one of the main differences between good bad taste and bad taste, which I think is known by Troma and John Waters, is making fun of something while not necessarily thinking you're better than it, which is a weird balance you have to get. But, like, Terra Firma is a movie that takes obscenity to such an extreme where it becomes the point of comedy. That I have a hard time calling movies obscene. I think things that happen in reality are more obscene than things that happen in movies. But anyway, Terra Firma, saying obscene for lack of a better word, there is so much obscenity in Terra Firma that it reaches the point of comedy that you can't help but laugh at it. And like I said, Terra Firma is definitely not for everybody, but there's just something about it where, like it says, it takes obscenity to such an extreme that it becomes art in this weird, fucked up way. Night of the Chicken Dead does that too. I personally think that Terra Firma does it a little better than Night of the Chicken Dead, but again, it's taking obscenity to such an extreme that it becomes kind of art in a way, in this weird, fucked up way. It's hard to explain. Like, Troma, it's weird. Troma movies are both easy to explain and difficult to explain at the same time, and while Troma is not for everybody, I do think everybody should see at least one Troma film throughout their life. And then you have Troma's take on Romeo and Juliet. Tromeo and Juliet, the one that was written by James Gunn. Another one of my favorite Troma movies. Like, my top 3 favorite Troma films are Toxic Avenger, Terra Firma, and Tromeo and Juliet. While Toxic Avenger is my favorite, I have a hard time picking between Terra Firma and Tromeo and Juliet. I kind of go back and forth between those. I've been thinking about that. But anyway, Tromeo and Juliet is a violent, raunchy, punk rock version of Romeo and Juliet, and it's great. And I honestly think it's a legitimately good love story. It's a fucked up love story, it's a raunchy love story, it's a violent love story, but still it's a good love story. Like, the character of Tromeo and Juliet, you can tell they really love each other. I'm gonna spoil a little bit here, because I want to talk about one of my favorite scenes in this movie. It follows the basic flow of Romeo and Juliet, but with a Troma twist and a lot of liberties taken. But it gets to the point where you have the character of Juliet, who is going to be forced to marry this other guy, and she doesn't want to marry him. She wants to marry Tromeo, but she takes this elixir that makes her ugly, and when she takes this potion, she turns into this weird cow-like monster, this half-cow, half-person-looking creature. She's got, like, snot dripping from her nose. She grows this huge freaking penis in between her legs, or at least I think it's a penis. And she literally looks like a half-human, half-cow kind of creature. And the guy who is going to marry her freaks out and wants nothing to do to her, eventually jumps out a window. But then this thing happens in it, which is kind of beautiful in a fucked up way. So you have Juliet looking like this cow monster, the guy who she's being forced to marry wants nothing to do with her, and then Tromeo comes into the room, sees her in this cow monster form, and is still head over heels in love with her, and they start making out and stuff like that. And as weird as it is, it's also kind of beautiful. Tromeo is so in love with Juliet, just Juliet, It doesn't matter how she looks, and the actress who plays Juliet doesn't look bad, I will say that. But Tromeo loves Juliet so much for who she is. It doesn't matter what she looks like. He loves her so much that he is still in love with her while she looks like this half-cow, half-human monstrosity, for lack of a better word. And that is kind of beautiful. That's one of the most beautiful things I've seen in a love story. It's like, okay, hey, you can look like this and I still love you. And he's still obsessed with her and sexually attracted to her even though she looks like this. And I love that moment. I mean, yeah, it's done for shits and giggles, but I think it's a legitimately great moment, even though it's fucked up and covered in slime. So yeah, I say this without any sense of irony. Tromeo and Juliet is one of my favorite love stories. Done in a punk rock violent way. Yeah, there's a lot of nudity and a lot of violence in Tromeo and Juliet, just like every Troma movie, but I can't help it. I really do think that Tromeo and Juliet is one of my favorite love stories. But then you have the movies distributed by Troma, the outhouse Troma movies, and there's some great stuff there. Like I said, Death by Temptation, a movie that's this blaxploitation sort of film that came out in 1990. That's so well done, and Samuel Jackson has a role in this movie, and it's a legitimately good little horror movie. You got movies like Combat Shock. You got Cannibal the Musical, which I mentioned earlier. The guys from South Park. This was their first project together. This is one of the wackiest movie based on an actual crime. It is technically a true crime movie with a lot of liberties taken, but it's the story of Alfred Packer, who was one of the first people arrested for cannibalism. But it's a period piece. It's a low-budget period piece made with very little money and very little resources, and it's a musical. It's a very goofy musical, but when you watch it, you see all the elements that would eventually become South Park. It's such a fun movie, and it kind of warms my heart because I got to see this on the big screen. I had a theater that was playing cult films for the longest time, and one night they were showing Cannibal the Musical. And unfortunately, this theater didn't promote this whole night properly, so it didn't do as much traction as I wish it did, so they could have continued doing it. But anyway, that night, it was a relatively full theater, and there was a lot of younger people in the audience, people who have never seen something like Cannibal the Musical. And I sat there getting ready to watch it, feeling a little nervous because I didn't know if they were going to appreciate, because there was a fair amount of younger people in here, people who were just out of high school or maybe even in high school, I'm not sure. But anyway, they're watching Cannibal the Musical, and I was a little worried because I didn't know if they would appreciate it as much as me. They were laughing the whole time. They were laughing and, having fun with the movie. And afterwards, I could hear a few of them say, "That was awesome." And that warmed my heart to see this independent, low-budget movie getting loved by a younger audience. This is why I want more people to see these kinds of films, because there is so much good stuff out there, I think, at least. There's Redneck Zombies. I recently did a trash review of Redneck Zombies, and I know I've talked about this series before, but I'll talk about it again here. Trash Reviews is a series I do on this channel, a very unusual series that I do, where I show appreciation for movies that are considered trash by a lot of people. I talk about micro-budget films, shot-on-video films, movies that do have a lower budget but a little higher than micro-budget movies, but they're still considered trash because, they're, a little on the raunchier side of things, a little on the dirtier side of things, not afraid to have a lot of nudity and a lot of dirt and blood and stuff in them. Like Troma films and early John Waters movies, things like that. And I show appreciation to these movies that are considered trash by a lot of people. And the reason I did one on Redneck Zombies is because that was the first shot-on-video horror movie that I had ever seen, and I saw it way back in the day when I was going through sort of a movie snob phase where I was only considered, true classic horror to be worthy of your time, and I looked down on horror movies that focused more on being fun and goofy and stuff like that, because I thought only scary movies and extreme horror movies were worthy of your time. So when I first watched Redneck Zombies, I hated it. But as I got older, I started developing an appreciation for micro-budget movies and lower-budget movies, and horror movies that were focusing more on being fun and things like that. And I gave Redneck Zombies another shot and found myself loving it. And I do. I love Redneck Zombies. It's a very goofy movie, very low-budget movie with very awkward humor, very awkward acting. But again, it just has this charm to it where you can't help but have a good time while watching it. Father's Day, one of my favorite micro-budget movies. Another movie that's not for everybody because of the subject matter involved in it, but it's a movie that was made for only $10,000 and it looks great. It looks absolutely incredible. It doesn't look like some high-budget high-budget movie or something. I will say it's art, but it doesn't look like this high-budget movie, but it looks like a very good movie. When you watch Father's Day, you would not think it was made for $10,000. And it's so well done. The thing about Troma movies, whether they're in-house Troma films or outhouse Troma films, I would recommend people see them if they want to make their own movies. I say this a lot, like, if you're someone who wants to make your own movies, I've made movies on my own, not as much as I would have liked to, but I've made movies on my own. You can see two of them on this channel. Enjoy, which is a short horror film that I made a long time ago, that's about 50 minutes long, and then this movie called Message from the Watcher, and I want to try to make some more short films again, just because I have this itch to create again. But I've been in a bit of a creative slump for a while, but I finally found myself getting out of it. But anyway, I recommend anybody wanting to make their own movies. You know, there is stuff you can learn from the classics. There's stuff you can learn from Jaws. There's stuff you can learn from Godfather and things like that. But if you really want to make your own movie, I think you can learn more from independent films, low-budget movies, micro-budget movies, and stuff like that, because one, they show that you can make a movie with little resources, and you can make a good movie with little resources, but it also can show the hardships of making a movie on your own, because when you're making a movie, like, big-budget movies have problems. I will never deny that. It is never, regardless of how much money you have, it is hard to make a movie. Fucking full stop. Making movies is difficult, but the more money you have and the more resources you have behind you, the more you can deal with those problems as they come up, and I don't want to say easier, but the more manageable those problems can be. The less money you have, the harder it is to deal with those problems, and those problems come up. That's why I think it's important to watch micro-budget movies, because it can show you the stress that is involved in micro-budget filmmaking and independent filmmaking, and like how to deal with those problems when they come up. Like, micro-budget filmmaking makes you a really good problem solver, because there's stuff that can easily go wrong. Like a perfect example, and again, not to toot my own horn, and I apologize if I'm rambling here, but when I made Enjoy, I had a guy who was going to do effects work for me. Now, mind you, I had no money when making this movie, but a friend of mine was good at effects work, and he was going to help me out. But then the day of filming, he had a family emergency, and it was not something that could be avoided. He could not come to the set. When you're making a movie with no budget, you're just getting friends to help you out, and scheduling is impossible. But he couldn't make it for the day, and I didn't have anything for the effects that I wanted to film for that day, so I thought, I am so fucked. So I had to figure out what to do, and I decided to make things a little more suggested, but I went to the grocery store. I went to the grocery store, got fake blood, got some sausages, and I put them in pantyhose and covered them in blood so they look like intestines. I got a liver, and I managed to make it work, and I am proud of how it looks. Admittedly, yes, it doesn't look like bigger budget gore effects, but I'm proud of the gore effects in that movie, and that's what I'm talking about. Independent filmmaking teaches you to become a problem solver. And I think you can learn so much from watching micro-budget movies and independent movies. So that's why I do think if people want to make their own movies, watch the bigger budget stuff, because that inspires a lot of people to make films. But if you want to make your own movies, watch independent movies, watch low-budget movies, watch micro-budget movies, watch Troma movies, because you will learn so much about independent filmmaking from watching those movies and watching the making of those movies. I personally, yes, I do think that as goofy as Terra Firma is, as in bad taste as it is, as much obscenities as that movie throws at you throughout the film, and while, yes, it is a goofy movie, it is a silly movie, it is over-the-top, wacky, I do think you can learn more about independent filmmaking from Terra Firma than you can from something like The Godfather. Not to say that Terra Firma is better than The Godfather, but I do think you can learn more from Terra Firma than you could from The Godfather, in all honesty, about filmmaking, especially independent filmmaking, and I'm being very serious about that. I am a proud Troma fan, and that's why I wanted to do this horror talk on Troma films, and that's why I want to show love to Troma films for these next few weeks as we build up to the new Toxic Avenger. I love Troma movies. And that's the thing about Troma fans. I will never say that one fan base is better than the other. I will never say that. I mean, every fan base is valid for loving what they love. You know, I'm a Star Trek fan. I prefer Star Trek to Star Wars. But I'm never going to say that Star Trek fans are better than Star Wars fans. I'm never even going to say that Star Trek is better than Star Wars, because I think they're both great in their own ways. So every fan base is valid, but there is something about Troma fans and fans of micro-budget filmmaking and low-budget filmmaking. They are very loyal fans because we understand not everybody loves Terra Firma. It's why I always kind of laugh whenever people get mad at people not liking their movies. You know, like, how could you not like this new Marvel movie? How can you not like the new Superman movie? How can you not like the new Fantastic Four? Anybody who's giving a bad review to these films that I like is being paid. You're being paid to not like this movie, or you're being paid to like this movie and stuff like that. Every time I see that stuff, I can't help but laugh because I'm a Troma fan. Do you know how much shit Troma movies get? I mean, if you're sitting here saying that your favorite... It's okay, guys. They're getting excited, too. If you're sitting here saying that you're upset because your favorite big-budget blockbuster is getting some hate, try being a Troma fan, because Troma films get a lot of negative press, and there's a lot of people who don't like Troma movies. And that's kind of the special part of being a Troma fan. You have this group of movies that aren't for everybody and get a lot of flack from a lot of people, but we still love them. We still love these movies and we still enjoy these movies despite the fact that not everyone loves them, despite the fact that there are a lot of people who shit on them. We're still here praising these movies. You know, like, what do you think is going to get more shit? The new Superman movie or Redneck Zombies? What do you think is going to get more negative reviews? The new Marvel movie, or the new Star Wars movie, or the next, or Class of Nukem High? What do you think is going to get more flack? The newest superhero movie or Terra Firma? And that's kind of the joy of being a Troma fan. It's like, yeah, we know not everyone likes these movies, but we enjoy these movies, and these movies are for us, and we can continue enjoying them and celebrating them together. It's just something about having this little community of fans that likes these dirty, raunchy, cheaper films. You know, I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm proud to be a Troma fan, and I know my fellow Troma fans out there are proud Troma fans as well. So, and Troma Entertainment has done so much for independent cinema. And I respect Troma Entertainment because it is a purely independent film company that celebrates independent filmmaking. So I want to show it some love in this video and in more videos to come leading up to the Toxic Avenger. And on that note, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all enjoyed this little love fest for Troma Entertainment. I think I definitely got a bit rambly here, and I apologize for that. As usual, I hope I've made some sense in this movie. There goes the dogs again. There's dogs, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, which is appropriate for Troma fans, Troma movies, getting all hot, getting all sweaty and dirty. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you're a Troma fan, sound off in the comments. If you've never seen a Troma movie, let me know if you're curious to check some out. But like I said, keep in mind, these movies are not for everybody. But I do think everyone should see at least one Troma movie. And I think everyone should at least check out The Toxic Avenger. There are so many more Troma movies out there. I've only talked about a few of them. And, yeah. Thank you so much for watching. If you're a Troma fan, let me know your favorite Troma movie down below. Let me know if you're curious to check out some Troma movies. And if you haven't seen too many Troma movies, let me know some of your favorite low to micro budget horror movies down below, or just your favorite low to micro budget movies down below. This is about celebrating independent cinema. But on that note, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you are looking forward to the Troma celebration that we're going to be doing on this channel for the next couple weeks or few weeks. And until next time, I hope you all have a good day, week, or whatever. Thank you so much for the continued support on this channel. And this is the Maniac, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.